Hello, Future Tribe. Welcome to another episode of the podcast. On this episode, I've got Adrian King from two different businesses, actually. Tell us a little bit about what you do, Adrian.
Hey, Jermaine. I've got two businesses, which seems like a crazy thing to do, but one of them's very new, and one of them's I've been doing for about 20 plus years. And the one I've been doing for most of my career has been animation and video production, more focused on the animation, and it's kind of led to the new business, which is really really exciting. So the first one's called Redboat, which is the animation business, and we do a lot of animation for government, for technology, for science, explaining tricky, complicated subject matter, sometimes very abstract ideas or complex ideas, and distilling them down into really condensed, smart, concise messages that can be transmitted to huge audiences in an animated format. And so I've had this career of 20 plus years in video and animation production. And what happened was it led to this new business because I had a client come to me and say, hey, can you put all this sort of animated intro and title onto our videos for us? And we're going to make 30 videos every single week. And they're just a single shot of about 90 seconds. And we want you to put our animated logo at the beginning and a call to action at the end and some branding on them. And I thought to myself, wow, that's really great bread and butter. I'm just going to make a killing out of doing this. It's great. But then it's going to be really boring, right? Somebody's going to be sitting down, it's working. I'm going to have one of my team members working on this stuff all week, punching out this stuff, and it's going to be, I've got to be able to automate this, right? It's got to be something that I can find a way to make this simpler and faster. And that set me off on this path, which has now become Brivvio, which is a separate business. And that's the one that I'm kind of working pretty hard to promote at the moment too.
Yeah, right. So Redboat is a bit more of an established business, and then you've got Brivvio. How old's Brivvio?
That's about a year and a half, but we only really released on the App Store in February on Valentine's Day this year.
So
So we
Brivvio
have,
is an iPhone or an iOS app at the moment, isn't it?
yeah. So Brivvio is an app, and it's kind of growing into a bit more of a platform. But at the moment, you download the app on the iPhone, and what it does is it enables anyone with zero training, zero skills, zero know-how, or anything like that. Basically, anyone can do it to create branded and captioned videos really, really fast and really easily. So puts your tops and tails with your branding on it and adds captions across the bottom.
Right. And then where does the footage come from? Can you shoot that on your iPhone, or can you bring in different bits and pieces of footage, or a mix?
Yeah, perfect. Yeah. So you can film within Brivvio. So you can film a single shot. Let's say you want to do a 60-second or 2-minute video on your phone. You film it in Brivvio, or you can import a video that you've created elsewhere.
Right. And we're sort of really jumping into the meat of the episode
Yeah.
already, but tell me a bit about how did you get a team together to build the app? I know maybe the craze has sort of dropped off a little bit now, but a few years ago, everyone wanted an app for everything. And there's different qualities of apps. There's different types of apps. There's apps that you can download from an iOS store, but then there's what's essentially a web app that you just use through a window on your phone. Tell me a little bit
Yeah.
about how you put it together and who you
Yeah.
used.
Yeah, great question, Jermaine, because it was an epic journey to get there. Like we really spent a year and a half developing this, and I had no idea how hard that was going to be to do the development. I've a bit of a technical background in my skill set as well as creative and stuff with the animation, but yeah, certainly a journey. And we tried several different technologies to make it work, including progressive web apps and like multi-platform, but we ended up having to rebuild the technology from scratch in order to make it work, because it requires a lot of heavy video processing, and so yeah, some of the initial attempts weren't so good. How it all started was I had this idea because this client said to me, "We want to do this," and I said, "Well, maybe I can automate this." And I had a bit of a conversation with them. They said, yeah, that'd be great. If we could just kind of like upload the video and it just comes back to us, that'd be great. And I thought, great, I'm going to make this systematized, and because I'm sure other people are going to want this. And so I built a prototype. I mocked it up. I did a little bit of basic prototyping. Actually, the first thing I did was I did the lean startup method. Everybody's probably heard of the lean startup. If you haven't, that's definitely a book you should read. And so I did the lean stuff. I built a web form, and I said, and it kind of mimicked the process of how to, like, a field say, upload video here, put in your title, put in colors, choose a background, and that kind of thing. And it didn't really do anything. It just pretended to be the process of putting, and I showed a few people and they said, yeah, great, I could use this. And so that was kind of my first sort of validation. So then I built the proper prototype, and I brought a developer on to help with that. And we built this very, very rough prototype. And I realized, I probably need to get some funding to develop this properly. So I started on that path, and I then met the Canberra Innovation Network, and they heard about the Griffin Accelerator. And so I applied to get onto that, because they sort of mentor the people that get into the accelerator program, and they put a bit of funding into it. And I got in. I had to pitch. It's a bit like Shark Tank, except friendly. And there's like 20 investors and mentors there, and I had to pitch for 5 minutes in front of them, answer all their questions. And God, that was nerve-wracking, but really worthwhile. And then I got in, and so I spent like 3 to 4 months in an intensive incubator space or accelerator program, validating that this was a viable product and expanding on the first prototype. Yeah.
Right. Wow. So, let's rewind a little bit. Give me an idea first of, because I've got a bunch of questions that I've just noted down. But the first one is, how old are you, if you don't mind me asking? You've had a business for 20 years, so I would assume you're at least 21, but how old are you?
Yeah, I am at least 21. Yes, definitely. I'm older enough to know better and young enough to not really care that much. Yeah.
So you did you start a business as soon as you left sort of traditional education?
No, go way back. I grew up in the UK, and although I've got family that originate here in Australia, I was born in the UK, and family from both sides, and dual citizenship. And I did uni in Leicester in the UK, and I was always fascinated by tech and design, the kind of crossover in that. And I ended up getting a job in London doing animation for computer games, which was really the dream job for a kind of early 20s young guy, right? It was just, back then it was fantastic. So, but then I kind of got a bit tired after a couple of years of doing that, and of London, really. It's England. It's so, I've been to Australia before, and I knew I'd got family out here. And I was like, I want to go and live in Australia for a while. And so I moved out here, emigrated here, and did a bit of traveling on the way, and ended up in a job out here. So it was 2 years of working in London, 2 years of working in Sydney in post-production for TV and film. And then I set up my first business, and it was like, what really set it off was I was always maybe a bit arrogant or ambitious. I just was like, I can do better than my employers, and the way they're treating me is terrible. And I always thought, this is not the way it should work. I found out how much money they were making from this project we were doing, and we were all working crazy hours. And I was just like, no, that's not fair. So I went out and I set up, it was, back then, nobody was really doing this kind of stuff. And I just went, right, fuck it. I'm just going to, am I allowed to swear?
Yeah, we'll just bleep it out. So it's all good.
All right. So I just went, it, and set up an ABN and started. And I just started asking people, hey, do you want some animation done for your TV thing or whatever it is? And started building up a client base. And I was really lucky because I had a part-time job teaching animation. So,
and you're still in Sydney at this point?
This was back in Sydney, yeah.
Yeah.
And because I lived there for 18 years. And so I had this part-time job, and that was what helped me get started in my own business. And then it took off, and it was like, okay, I can't keep the part-time job now. I just have to focus on my business.
Yeah, I mean,
and that grew.
that's a lovely way to do it
Mm,
as well, right? Have a bit of and you know, I guess a few points to touch on there. First, it's I don't think it's arrogant to think that you can do it. You can do a better job. It's sort of what drives everyone to do. I think all companies exist because you feel like you can do a better job, and
mm,
I talk about this a lot where some people sort of put their hand up because I think business exists to serve, and ultimately whoever serves better will win. And some people might put their hand up and go, no, business exists to make money, and it doesn't matter how you make money. um, that's all that matters, is that you make money. um, but I would argue that it sounds to me like you wanted to create a better way of doing something, and there's a reason that you would win out, or you'd continue to, like, you've been around for 20 plus years in the business, and there's
mm.
a reason why people would pick you over and over again, and that is because you provide value, versus sort of necessarily just some other sort of I guess aspect or element to what you do. And then as an extension of that as well, you talked about the fact that you essentially used a job to fund um, your ultimate goal and what you wanted to do, which I just think you shouldn't it shouldn't be neglected. I think nowadays there's a bit of a culture of dump it all, just go into your business, take all the loans that you can, and people talk about, oh, in my first few years I had 5 credit cards and I was maxing each of them out, but there's something to be said for actually, it's more sustainable to take money from one thing and pump it into what your real passion is. Is that how you were thinking about it at that time? Was I'm just going to
Yeah.
do this until I can move into this full time?
I think my idea about why I set up my own business and why I was doing it changed, and it evolved over time. I think when I first started it, um, it I think it was partly about the money. It was like, well, I know I'm good at this job and I enjoy doing it. So why don't I set up a business where I kind of, you know, make more money basically doing the same thing? And the challenge, I think, though, is, and the reason why a lot of people go into business for themselves is they're good at what they do, and they want to kind of have more control over their own time and not be their own boss. Um, and that was kind of partly it. I didn't really like working for other people. I just wanted to be my own boss and have more flexibility. But it actually turned into a situation where, and this is what happens for most people who go into business for themselves, is you own your own job. You still have a job, all right? So you don't have an exit plan. You don't have a way out. And that was something I started to realize after a couple of years. And I realized, I'm still doing the same stuff. I just have a bit more flexibility with my time. But then, that's kind of got a downside too, because I could end up working in the evenings. It gets really busy and stuff. And, what if, and if there's no work on, then, and no clients come in the door, then, hey, I can't go on holiday because I don't have money. So it changes the dynamic. And I think what a lot of people don't think about when they go into business is what's the long-term vision. With a job, you've got a salary, and at least it used to be anyway. I mean, these days it might be a bit different because jobs are not as secure as they used to be. But the way it used to be is you have a job and that's your security set. So whereas people go into business, there's less security, but you have a goal, which is maybe to build a business up, to bring on investors, to sell the business, much like you would build a property and sell that, and then you retire. And so after a couple of years of 2 or 3 years, I think I started to get that picture of, yeah, I kind of need to rethink how I'm doing business. And I brought on a close friend at the time who to become a business partner, and we sort of changed the structure of the business. We built it up, and we did them really, really well for 5 years, and doubled our turnover every single year for 5 years straight, which was pretty impressive from a garage thing. We didn't have any investors, no capital investment. I think we just totally bootstrapped the business. Um, but we did the classic thing, which is to overcapitalize and sort of over diversify too quickly, and had overheads that weren't sustainable. And there was a downturn in the market, and things got really competitive, and then we had to sort of closed the business down. And so I scaled it back again. He went off to go and do something else, and I scaled it back to what I was doing before, and had to rethink the business completely. And I read this amazing book back then called, oh, what was it called? The Network Economy or something like that, by, I always forget the guy's name. He's some guy who started like Wired magazine, I think it's, anyway. So
Mhm.
basically the concept was that the future of business is networked businesses, not these monolithic businesses that own lots of stuff and have big overheads. The future is flexible businesses that cooperate and collaborate. And that picture stuck in my mind. And so I reformatted the animation business to be really low overhead, really flexible, really agile. And it let me travel, let me live up in the Northern Rivers for a couple of years, travel for 3 years whilst I kept this business going. I traveled all over New South Wales and ACT, house sitting and traveling and exploring a lot of Australia. And, that was really interesting, having this lean, agile business model. But the problem with that, it was not as scalable. So there's all these different ways you can approach business. But the thing that most people forget is what's the end game? Where are you going to go? What do you want to get out of this? Where do you want to be in 10 years, 5 years, 10 years time?
The
Do you
the
want
way
to
I
build it up?
always put it is, you would never leave your house without knowing your destination. I can't think of an instance where anyone could actually say, no, that's exactly what I would do. And business is the same thing, but instead of thinking, where am I going in the next 10 minutes, you've got to think, where am I going in 10 years time, and how can I sort of, what are the directions, whether it's the exact directions that I believe, or I mean, not obviously business, you talked about how it's unpredictable, you've got control over everything, but the beauty of that as well is that there are things that you can control, of course, and you control as much as you can. And if there's no ceiling to what you can do, where in a traditional job for 10 years, okay, you can get promoted and you can sort of move up the ranks, but at some point, um, unless you challenge the owner, you're not going to
Yeah,
be able to
there's a
keep
ceiling.
moving up.
Yeah, yeah, there's a
There's
limit.
exactly there's And that limit is not really dictated by you either. It's sort of this, it's dictated by the parameters around who you work for,
Yeah,
which to some people's, I mean, if you like predictability, it's wonderful, isn't it? Because you can map it all out, and there's a fairly, you can say, every x period of time I'm going to get X promotion, which will come with X pay rise, which means that, at this point in my life I'll be on this much income, and I can have this many dependents and this kind of
yes,
loan, and it's
yeah,
beautiful. But
yeah,
if you like a bit of chaos and
yeah,
unpredictability, you have to get into business and sort of, know. I think it's always a fine balance of knowing that it'll be okay and it'll be fine, but also wanting to work so that it'll be okay and it'll be fine. You can't just sort of dump it all and go, tomorrow I'm going to start a business and it'll be fine, and I'm not going to work towards it. I'm not going to put a plan around that.
yeah. That's really, really insightful, Jermaine. Like and when I first started, having that job on the side really, really helped. So, jumping into stuff, like, unless you have the funds to be able to do it, like, to be able to survive, and you've got like a year's worth of runway or more, and you sort it, then you kind of just have to find a way to manage the chaos. Like you said, you've got the reliable income of a job or salary, and that you can plan for life with that. Get married, have kids, have a mortgage, etc., etc. Have 2 holidays a year, um, all that kind of stuff. But when you go into business for yourself, it's harder to plan that kind of stuff, and so it's a challenge. And so being able to manage that is really, really important part of actually running a business. Being able to manage your life so that you sustain yourself is really important. A mentor said to me years back. One of my mentors back in Sydney said, there are 3 rocket ships to enlightenment. Um, he said, the first one is to have your own business. So it's kind of like rocket ship number 1. You want to get enlightenment, have a business. The second one is to have a relationship. So it's like rocket ship number 2 goes faster, all right? It goes higher. The third one is to have kids, have a family. Rocket ship number 3. These are the 3 rocket ships. I've only done number 1. I've had rocket ship number 2, but we crashed and burned a couple of times. And
Hey, that
rocket ship number
sometimes
1, I've
happens,
crashed
right?
and burned that a couple of times too. You know,
Exactly.
that's rocket ship number 1. I haven't had rocket ship number 3 yet, but we'll see. Anyway, look, these are the things. You know, you go for the ambitious. Like, how much am I going to grow in my life if I just keep doing this sort of have a predictable life? It's great. I'm going to enjoy it. It's going to be map it out, and I can create all of these things. Have a comfortable house and a life and all of that stuff. Or do I want to embrace the chaos and go for my ambitious dreams and goals and see what I can achieve? And it's not for everybody. I don't think. I think there's pros and cons to both. Sometimes I think, yeah, it would be great to have just had a much simpler life and be able to predict all these things. I could still have great adventures, but just different sorts.
Do you think that the people who feel like, their goal or like part of their, not necessarily their calling, but, part of their purpose is to have a business, do you think it's almost then like, and it, I sort of feel this way, so I'm interested to hear what you think, is I feel like it's almost my purpose. It's almost like it'd be incorrect not to, at the very least, explore it. Like, okay, it can crash and burn, that's fine, but like if I feel like I have that potential, it's almost unfair to myself, let alone the potential impact that I can have, and therefore unfair to other people if I don't sort of explore it and tap into it. Do you sort of agree with that, or how do you sort of look at that drive that you might have, that sense of entrepreneurship, exploration, innovation?
Yeah, I like that, Jermaine. That's great. I'm being unfair to oneself. Yeah, I think, yeah, in some way I agree with that. It's like, if you have a creative desire, you have a burning desire you want to do something, you want to create something, whether it be to make a piece of artwork or a sculpture to put on the wall, or to have a family and create a wonderful, stable environment for your family, or to create a business and to do something like that, or to create a charity and do something great for the world. It's If it's a strong enough desire, and I think I come back to desire. Desire is where it is. People say desires is bad thing, sin, evil, blah blah blah, and it's the fruit of all evil and all that stuff. Rubbish. Desire is actually motivating us. It drives us to do great things. Sure, it can, the wrong type of approach to desire can lead us astray, but it can be such a
To
powerful
jump in
thing.
there, it's
Yeah,
more what you've got to explore is the root of that desire that could be a bad thing, right? Desire itself isn't a bad thing. It's
yeah,
if the root of it is to, global domination, that might not be the best. But if the root of it, that desire, is to help more people or to create a safer home for your family, like that desire then is, oh, it's fine. Obviously, then it becomes a matter of what actions you take to make that desire reality. But that's what I would argue. And sorry to cut
yeah.
you off, but
Yeah, no. I think you're right, and it's an important distinction. But I think also, if your desire is for world domination or to enslave the human race, then I think you're just missing the point, right? So, just get with the program, because that's not the point, and it's probably not the root desire of that's probably coming from fear or anger or resentment or whatever it is, or control or that kind of stuff, And when you do enough work on yourself and you clear your emotional baggage and stuff, you find that actually desire is a beautiful thing, because we all actually have love in our hearts, and we all value contribution and get a real hit and a real buzz from contributing to the world. And having a business with vision and purpose is, and this is something I hear a lot recently over the last few years, is people talking more and more about the importance of having a mission or vision and a purpose-led businesses, and how that really is a powerful driver for business. Not just a business model or a great product or great customer service or great marketing, but actually having something which is purpose-led. And I think and that's resonating a lot more these days with customers, consumers, the younger generation. Having a purpose is very important.
Yeah, well, I mean, they also look at it, I guess, the younger generation, and with this freedom to access so much information, you can look into a business and a company and understand whether their values align with yours. Whether you know,
Mm,
just yesterday, we had a family dinner, and we were talking about ethical sourcing and the freedom or the information that we can tap into these days that lets us educate ourselves on the supply chain. And so ultimately, even that level of transparency means that I think businesses need to be better. Just even if they were like, I love Nike, for example, but I think we were looking through how Nike defines what they do and why they do it. And this might be improper of me to say, but I think what the way they've defined themselves is in a positive light, so that the younger generation will keep buying Nike. Talking about sustainability and innovating in products to sort of enable everyone. And Nike's for athletes, and then there's an asterisk, and the asterisk says Nike believes that if you're a human, you're an athlete. And it starts to get,
yeah,
to me, that's commercially driven. But when you're starting a small business, you don't
yeah.
really have that freedom. You have to be good from the ground up, because
Yeah.
one or two customers can be 10% of your whole client base.
Mm. Yeah, that's right.
So there's sort
Yeah,
of sort
yeah,
of this importance for you to be purpose led and truly purpose led as well.
that's right. And being purpose led, not just for marketing purposes, uh, because like you can go, yeah, well, we're going to be a purpose led business because that's really good for marketing and it's going to get us more customers because customers want purpose led businesses, and then you've just kind of shot yourself in the foot because all you're going to do is be trying to appear purpose led. And it's you got to tap into something which is more human. You got to tap into, the business owners have to have their own personal reason for doing this, and the same applies for the team. You've got to, if you're running a business, to be able to instill a vision and a sense of purpose to the team is a very powerful thing. If it's just done for marketing, then it's just not going to carry as well. It's not quite the same. When you maybe when you're a global corporation, you can get away with that kind of stuff, but certainly for small businesses, it doesn't resonate. The thing about like some of the stuff we do for Brivvio is we're helping small businesses to connect with audiences, to reach out and create branded videos really quickly and easily, right? So we have a lot of conversations with small business owners is about branding and reaching out to and connecting with audiences and what that means. And some of the interesting things about things that people have said to me is, well, what is branding? Well, branding is the logo, or it's your color scheme, or it's your image, or it's your tagline. But then the really interesting conversations come back and they say, no, it's none of that stuff. Actually, it's your promise. It's your vision and your purpose and the message, like your future theory and the promise you give to people, which you told me earlier on.
Yeah,
What's that?
yeah,
That's
exactly. Which is to
to
make your
help
goals
people
come true,
make your
essentially.
goals come true.
Yeah,
Exactly. It's like
yeah.
having a reason for doing it, and that really is powerful on a small business level because the people that you're reaching, whether it be through social media or your networks, putting out videos or social media posts or being in podcasts like we're doing now, are going to trust you if you're a small business because you're part of the local community. There's a much, what I'm trying to say is that it's easier to trust smaller businesses who you are closer to than it is to trust a mega brand that is
That's
national
just everywhere and ubiquitous.
everywhere,
Exactly. Yeah.
because you feel closer to the people of the business. And so, especially on social media, and you're more likely to get a response from the business that is personal. And so it's easier to build that level of trust. And so yeah, it's a very different experience to, or approach social media and brand message, if you like.
Well, and even having and having that purpose, I've found at a more even operational level, makes it really easy when we're trying to make decisions. For us internally, we're a mission to you sort of pre-recording of this episode, that we're looking at rebranding and sort of explaining our position and making decisions along the way. One thing I turn to is, how does it sort of answer, how does it serve our ultimate goal? And it becomes very easy. For example, like part of it is that we want to employ people locally, get people on the team, get people in person. I think
Yeah.
moving forward, especially there's this huge thing. We've probably, every generation's heard it, where technology is going to kill X amount of jobs or get rid of X amount of jobs.
Yeah.
And we're seeing that like we do. You would have seen that from sort of the animation side, because people are going to say, well, technology means that you can just outsource it to XYZ, or you can just
Mm.
automate it. For us, that's websites, companies like Squarespace, who just go do
Yeah.
it yourself. um,
Mhm.
but for us, what it comes back to, and I would hazard a guess that for you is the same, is that we want to assemble a team of humans who
Mm.
want to help humans and who want
Mm.
to communicate with humans. And ultimately, no matter how good AI gets, no matter how good software gets, they can think like a human, but they can't think as a human. If
Mm.
that sort of um, is a distinction enough. So
Yeah.
for us, it becomes serving people fundamentally is going to mean that we will serve people, and therefore we can't be removed, because there has to be a human in this equation. And for you, you're using software, yes, through Brivvio, but ultimately that is designed for people, and there's going to be a limit to in skilled hands. Brivvio would be much better than in less skilled hands, because you've still got to get the message right within the video. You've still got to identify who you're talking to and talk to them how they want to hear you, versus just making a video, because that can be anything, right? I'm sure you've experienced um, the whole spectrum of good to bad videos.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Um, I'll tell you a little story. When I first, so again, my whole career has been behind the video camera or looking through the lens of the screen and editing and post production. And so I was scrutinizing every little pixel. And with Brivio, I started to have to put myself in front of the camera to actually show how this works and do my own little videos. And oh my God, the first time I put myself on camera, I was terrified. I was doing an interview for something, and uh, I was just like, I froze up. I couldn't speak properly. I sounded weird. I was like, I didn't know what to do with my hands. Should I look at the lens? Should I was just like, oh, that's crap. And so, even with this career of directing and so on, other people, it was hard. And because there is that human element to putting yourself in front of a camera. Um, and so, yeah, it was definitely a journey to be able to present and to put myself on camera. And there are a whole bunch of things that you can learn, and tips and tricks and techniques, and to learn that stuff. And anybody can do it, really. It's just a matter of going through the process of getting comfortable with it, learning a few tricks and tips and techniques. But yeah, I think what you were saying, going back to the AI sort of thing about replacing people's jobs and things, is you can't really replace the why. You can't. I don't know. Maybe you can, but maybe one day we'll be able to. But I don't think at the moment you can get things like artificial intelligence and machine learnings to kind of really have a fully conceptual reasoning or understanding of why we should be doing something, why we should do this instead of that, or why XYZ is better than this. And that's where the human judgment comes in, and it's a very subjective thing. So yeah, I think those types of jobs where that level of reasoning come in, creative reasoning, are things that will be very hard for AI to change, to replace. Um, Going off on a tangent here with AI, but hey, it kind of still comes back to that human thing of purpose and, why are we doing stuff? What are we doing here on the planet? The more we're connected with the why, like, okay, I'll tell you, can I just diverge into another little story about
Yeah,
Redboat?
go for it. Go for it.
So the animation business. Thanks. As I love, this is another little one that I was doing I've always been doing lots of trainings throughout my life. I've always been putting myself into new learning experiences, trying to kind of advance myself and grow personally. And one of the ones I did was in Sydney about 5 or 6 years ago. I did the Entourage training with Jack Delos's team in Sydney, and it was great. It was really, really good. I mean, some people love it, some people hate it, but I had a great time. I went through their whole training. One of the most important things I got out of it was the connecting with the vision for the business. And so previously, Redboat we did a lot of advertising, marketing. Did a little bit of technology stuff, a little bit of science communication. And when I connected with the real vision for the business, this sort of sense of purposefulness, that changed the business. And I'd always had this conflict with me. It's like, yeah, I'm good at what I do. I'm good at running this business. We do great animation. I've got a great team of animated designers and people that rely on it. And we do great stuff, great script writing. All of it's fantastic. But a lot of it's marketing. It's been sort of like, selling stuff. And I had this push-pull of like, well, there's something else inside me as a person that wants to express itself that wasn't feeling like it sat perfectly well with the business, which was about communication and marketing. And when I resolved that, it all clicked into place. And that was getting in touch with this one little set of words. And that was why. Why am I doing this? And that is to move human thinking forward. And sorry, somebody's pinging me on Slack.
That's all right.
When I got those words, and I was helped by the team in the Entourage to kind of connect with that, it was like, oh, yes, if I can make my business a manifestation of this purpose, this is kind of like my personal reason for being here on this planet, to move human thinking forward. It felt emotionally like, oh, I'm fulfilling something in myself personally through my business, and the business is creating value for the planet, the people, the customers, everything. It's a win, 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 win.
All around,
And
yeah.
it changed the business. And over the next couple of years, I without even really trying, just having that statement present for me and repeating that and even putting it on the website, that's my vision, that's the vision for the business, just seemed to attract different customers. And we started getting really big, interesting projects that were about the Great Barrier Reef or environmental stuff, helping people with understanding government policies or the marine parks or blockchain or technology, really interesting things. And the marketing and sales stuff, which was more advertising-y type stuff for products and things, started to just drop away. And I didn't even have to do anything to actually try that. It was just connecting with the vision made a huge difference in the business somehow, on some level. I don't know how it works. I don't know the
Yeah.
mechanics of it, but it just
Well,
did.
I mean, I guess there's surely an element of you, especially when you're starting off, the individual is the business, right? So I'm sure, as an extension of you thinking that way, the business to an extent also thought that way because, at least initially, when you're starting off, for all intents and purposes, that is, you are the business, and therefore how you think is how the business thinks. I can't believe, like, genuinely, I wasn't expecting the purpose behind what you do to be so separate almost. Because I've always wondered, like I know why we do what we do, and now come to think of it, it's almost really quite separate. But you use animation to move human thinking forward, and And like, I just didn't think that's where this conversation was going to go. But that is I could
Yeah.
see how that could be so enlightening and so powerful, because then that informs the decisions that you make. And um you might not do it sort of very manually, and you might not do it intentionally, but it would also affect who you work with and the types of projects that you do. um we've got that to an extent as well, where again, the more we've started focusing on why we do what we do, we've been even more comfortable saying no to projects. Like a few months ago, there was a project that came in. It would have been humongous. This person wanted to start essentially his own little car sales, and car sales is a really big website, but
Mm.
it was all money driven. And I could tell from the conversation, the fact that, the emails were short. It was just like, these are specs, just give me a price. I said, that's not how we work. Can we meet? I don't want to meet, just give me a price. Just give me a price. I just want to get this done as cheap as possible.
Yeah.
And when we ask ourselves the question of, you know, is this what we want to do? Is this, okay, we talk about making goals come true. Might this be this person's goal? But I guess as a layer of that for us is also asking, is this for the better of, bettering of society, communities? Is this helping someone?
Yeah.
We sort of came back to, this is just going to be helping some guy sell more cars that, you know, could be of
Mm.
questionable quality, could be of amazing quality, but ultimately it doesn't sort of
Mm.
fit in. And even for you, I'm sure you've found this as well, where when you've taken on projects, sometimes there are moments of, maybe not for you, but for me, I've definitely had moments of sort of financial desperation of like, we just got to accept this because it's, there's not enough money in the bank to make payroll next week or whatever. And you take on a project and you realize this thing just, it doesn't align with what I'm trying to do, and therefore it's a chore. It's gone from, you could animate one thing that is beautiful, like you just put in so much time that you
Yeah.
don't even feel time pass, and you could
Yeah.
spend half his time on something else and go, that felt like it took 4 times longer,
Yeah.
um, because it doesn't align with ultimately. And the beauty of, I guess, being your own boss, or being the business, is that you can decide to say no to projects, and you don't have to push
Yeah.
your morals and ethics sometimes, where I know
Yeah.
people who, we're in very, even like sales assistants, who have to sort of blur their own morals and ethics because, hey, you've got KPIs to meet, and if you don't,
Yeah.
the retailer's going to really blast you, and your manager's going to be in trouble, and you don't have that
Yeah.
control.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally. It's such an interesting subject. Like, I've certainly had times where it's been hard to, meet all of the obligations of running and owning a business. But that's just part of having a business, is you're always aware of that, and sometimes it's easier and sometimes it's harder. Um, there's always challenges with that, but there's also this thing of taking on projects for money versus taking on projects for purpose, doing the right thing, or the thing that's right for you as a business, as a people, as humans. And in my experience, every time I've taken on a project which has felt that it's more about money and that kind of, well, we need to make ends meet, or we need to put money in the bank, and this is a good opportunity to make some money, and it's not necessarily aligned with the vision. Every single time it's been harder, more difficult, and usually not as profitable
Mm-hmm.
as as the things that are more purpose led. And I put it down to, when things are purpose led and you're sort of aligned with them and it feels good to be doing them, to doing the work, it's easy to get out of bed in the morning and roll into work and do it because it feels good. There's a sense of, I suppose, optimism and reason for doing it that is beyond the money. And that's powerful. Whereas if you're doing some things because you have to, it doesn't feel great. It's kind of a trap. It's harder. And that somehow creates resistances and complexities in the workplace, in the job, in the client relations, and all of that kind of stuff that make it harder financially, profitability, just more difficult in the long run. So, it'd be fascinating to see if anybody's done any research. Somebody somewhere probably done some research looking at that type of, to see whether there is profitability differences between purpose-led and non-purpose-led businesses. It'd be really interesting to see.
It probably has a lot to do. I mean, talking about the fact that inevitably, when you don't necessarily take on stuff that's purpose led, there tends to be more issues. It just tends to not work as well. I'm sure it's something to do with mindset as well, right? Because if it's something that's purpose led, a problem might not look like a problem. A problem might just look like a little road bump on the way versus a huge closed gate that keeps you
Yeah.
out. So
Yeah.
I'm
It's
sure
the approach.
that has to do exactly.
It's the attitude is different.
Mm.
But it doesn't mean that we should all run around, being at charity cases with our businesses and suddenly trying, spending all of the profits on. We've still got personal goals and visions for profitability. So you still have to have all of that business logic and business models and be accountable as a business. It doesn't mean you just suddenly go off and start trying to save the planet, and because you can't do it. It's got to be sustainable as well.
Well, exactly. Ultimately, just because you're doing something purpose led, the realities, the physics, the fact of how everything works don't just cease to exist, right? Just because you're trying to do something purpose led, your electricity provider isn't going to say, "Don't worry about it. That electricity is free," or whatever it may be. So it's ultimately got to sort of work. Like, it's one thing that I thought about when I got into the business full time was, if I had to work and at the time it was, if I had to do like a sales assistant type role on the weekends, or if I had to finish work at 5 o'clock, at 6 o'clock start cleaning someone's office until 9 o'clock to then fund the business, I was willing to do that. I was like, if that's what it takes, knowing that that's not forever, it's just when I'm starting off, when things are quiet, when you're trying to build things up, uh, it's sort of, for me, that wouldn't have been much at all. It would have just been, a way of accepting the realities, the physics, the things that life entails, and the systems that we've built. Just realizing that I've got to play the game. I can't sort of go, I'm going to remove myself from these things that dictate everyone else's life, like bills and the need to eat, for example. I'm just going to look at ways where I can still do it all, and make some money separately if that was the problem at the time. How are we doing for time, by the way? Speaking of time, you
I'm
okay for a
good.
little longer? Cool.
Yeah. Yeah. We'll sort
Um,
of. Yeah. Yeah.
well, I did have another question. This goes back to way earlier when you
Yeah,
talked
we've got
about
a real deep dive, haven't we?
oh, and so many tangents. but
Yeah.
that's
Awesome.
what this is all about. I love this. You talked about Accelerator. So you went to Griffin Accelerator. I
Yeah.
want to just talk to you a little bit about why you went to an accelerator, how you thought
Yeah.
about that, how you chose to take,
Yeah.
what is it? I would assume there was some monetary investment
Yep.
there as well.
Yep.
And
Yep.
how you sort of factored all that into the decision that you made versus just trying to self-fund it, for example.
Yeah. Yeah. Good. That's a brilliant question, Jermaine. Opens up a whole load of really interesting subjects. So when I first, okay, so I'll backtrack a little bit more. Uh, One of the other things I learned when I was around about the time that I was getting in touch with the vision that we've spoken about was this concept of what is a startup? What is the business life cycle? From startup, proof of concept, MVP, startup, uh, to growth, to scale, and then to exit. And there's this kind of like curve that kind of start off slow and then growth and scale and then exit, and or sometimes IPO for the big ones. And this kind of curve that goes up was kind of new to me. And it goes back to what I was mentioning earlier on. We were discussing the reasons for getting into business, and most people not having an idea of an exit. And seeing this picture really clearly for me gave me a sense of, well, how do you go on this journey to have, like, let's say a 5 or 10-year journey with a business where you can exit at the end of that and sell it and then have enough money to pay off your house, or, you know, start up another venture, or maybe retire. And when I say retire, I don't mean go and, you know, live on the farm. I mean, do whatever you want to do in life, right?
Have the
Without having
freedom to,
have the
for
free,
money to
yeah,
not be a constraint.
yeah, exactly. And so this sort of picture of the business life cycle made me understand the value of capital and the value of investment in businesses, and why people raise capital at startup stage and growth stages in the business. And things like angel investors, seed funding, Series A, Series B funding, and IPOs, and what that does for a business. It gave me a picture of, I understand why those things are valuable now. Because the more money you have at the beginning, the more capital you have in the business at the beginning, the faster you can grow. And otherwise you have to bootstrap it, and it's a slow journey, and you don't necessarily have the scale to be able to, the funds to be able to put on a business development marketing manager or whatever it is, to be able to do some advertising to bring in more sales, or to develop that product that's going to open up into a new market. And so that's the value of having that capital. And so though I realized when I had this idea for Brivvio, I'm going to need some money, and I don't really have enough money to do this by myself. How am I going to do this? And I now have this picture of, well, I can go and see if I can find some angel investors to put some money in, to own a little bit of the equity. And I understand what they're going to get out of it. Their vision is to get a particular return on their investment. They might want to get 10, 20 times return on their investment, which is obviously a lot more than you can get in a bank or in a fund. And they'll spend a little bit of their cash to be able to take a punt. And you know, if they believe in the business and if they believe in the founder. And so I started to look at that as an option for Brivvio. And I thought, right, well, I'll put together a pitch deck. And I started to show it to a couple of people who I knew were working and had connections in their space, and to float the idea of, you know, could I raise $150,000 to make this a fast growth business? And what I realized was, actually, no, it was a course I did at the Canberra Innovation Network that was about negotiating term sheets. That was fantastic. I went and did this course at Canberra Innovation Network that was a simulation of negotiating with investors to raise finance. And it was fantastic. It was such an eye-opener that I realized I'm going to be eaten alive if I go and try and do this now without some sort of mentoring and coaching and the right type of people around me to grow my skill set, to get my confidence up. I will just get eaten alive. You know, they're just going to, I'll end up with nothing of the business or something like that. And so I thought, well, you know what? I need to find that place where I can get that mentorship. How am I going to learn all this stuff? Because I've never done all this stuff before. I started looking at lots of books. I was reading books about venture capital, startup funding, all that kind of stuff. And I learned a lot through that. But really, it was when I found out about the Griffin Accelerator, I went, 3 or 4 months of dedicated immersion in that, and really kind of having mentors around me that I can talk to all the time on call would be fantastic. And so, yes, it meant giving up a little bit of the business, like giving a percentage of the business up, but it also got a little bit of injection of funds to kickstart it as well. And so I thought, well, I'll give it a go and see what happens, rather than me trying to go straight out there and raise funding without that level of mentorship. I'll do this first. And that was my decision to apply for the Griffin Accelerator program. And I think that it paid off in that respect.
Yeah, and I think one of those realizations that I had over the years is that money is a tool rather than this thing that you necessarily had to accumulate. It's just it can be an exchange of in a business. It's a tool, but also it's something that someone gives you in exchange for value that you present to them, right? So it's this thing that can take different shapes and forms, and I think there's for different people, and you can make a mistake of it, right? You can take on too much debt because money is just a tool, and then you can really sort of end up damaging yourself, and that's sort of looking at in credit card debt and things like that. But then you look at it as a tool for a business, and it's a tool that can unlock, more personnel. It can unlock rapid growth, hockey stick growth. It can do more, and it's a conversation that I have with people sort of close to me in my life who so do they work traditional jobs and things like that. So they look at money as this thing that they work, they earn, they like there's a very finite cap around the parameters to which they can, like, they can't just earn more money tomorrow than they did today. It's sort of very limited. But then when you're running a business, I think you've got to obviously respect that money is sort of something that you need to keep the lights on, to pay people. There's responsibilities, but at the same time, it's this tool that there's no cap to how much, there's nothing stopping a business from earning more money tomorrow than they did today,
Yeah.
or 10 times more money in 2 days than they did today. So you've got to sort of look at it as a tool, and it looks like that is sort of that decision that you made, and obviously tapping into the expertise and the personnel and the network around you that you would have got access to through Griffin Accelerator as well. That would have been invaluable.
Mm, mm. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I can vividly remember some of the conversations that were very challenging, chatting with mentors who have successfully built up a business over 10 years and sold it for millions of dollars, right? And they ask hard questions I would never ask myself, and a lot of them I didn't want to hear. And that's valuable stuff, right? To have access to a pool of mentors who can ask those hard questions and challenge you a little bit, but also access to investors as well. To be introduced to potential angel investors is valuable, because how else do you meet them if you've just got an idea and you don't already walk in those circles of what they call other people's money, with investors and stuff. Yeah, it's a great way to find that, because otherwise you're reading books, you're watching stuff on YouTube, listening to audiobooks, all that kind of stuff, maybe doing some online courses. It's armchair stuff, right? You
Yeah.
can only
Yeah. It's
go
all
so much.
theoretical, conceptual
Yeah,
until
yeah.
you actually have to do
Stepping.
it, and
Yeah, that's right.
um,
Yeah.
have to sort of execute on that. I mean, we're looking at a similar thing of how can we sort of further our growth, because for the last few years it's very much been just reinvesting, taking low pay so that we can reinvest more into the business. But
Mm.
that too reaches a limit, because below a certain threshold there's costs of living that have
Mm.
to be sort of accounted for. So you can't just go to zero, or no matter how hard you try. So that's why I thought I'd sort of pitch that question to you, see how you sort of approached it, and how you sort of answer those questions for yourself. Now, as we sort of wrap up, what do you hope
Mm.
to do moving forward within the two different businesses? Will they
Yeah.
are they sort of has Redboat continued to sort of stay at the same size, or are you looking at sort of trying to scale that up as well, or how are you handling
Yeah,
the two
yeah.
businesses?
Yeah. Great, interesting question. So, the vision, Redboat, I love Redboat. It's not something that I'll ever let go of. Or, well, I mean, look, Brivvio is on a trajectory to grow. So that's my real passion baby at the moment, is growing that. And so I put a lot of energy into that. And so, that's got huge potential. Redboat is harder to scale, but it's such a valuable business. I love the work we do, and it's I love it. It's a wonderful thing that we create beautiful animations that really help people and for worthy causes and stuff. Like, right now we're doing one for the United Nations Environment Program about the reef and stuff, and it's
Right. Wow.
just beautiful stuff. It's about saving reefs and stuff, and dealing with things. I did one recently for a new technology for which is addressing climate change, sort of emissions and stuff. Dealing with, which doesn't address climate change. It's part of the solution. Anyway, so stuff like that is always valuable, and I want that to continue. So my vision for Redboat is to continue that, uh, and to grow that gently enough so that it can become something that sustains itself. Maybe bring on some new partners, collaborate with the right people or the right groups or the right other businesses to be able to take that further than I can by myself. And with Brivvio, that's something that has got a lot of growth ahead of it, and we're right at the beginning of that, really. So we're really, I mean, although we launched the app in February, we're still kind of in pre-launch, really, for where it can go. So it's early days, it's an early stage, and a very exciting time for it because we're still developing and evolving it and pivoting it.
Yeah, that's extremely exciting. And I can tell from sort of how you talk about it that you just can't wait to see where you can take it. One last question before we sort of get into the top 12. When is
Yeah.
there going to be an Android app?
That is the $1 million question. And if if I had $1 for every time somebody asked me that question, we would have an Android app right now. So it's partly cash flow. It's partly sort of we've been refining the product to get it right, and over the last 6 months, and we've got a really good solid base product now. The app is really a great platform, but and there's still a lot of new things we can do with that, but it is on the roadmap to do the Android version as soon as possible. And so it's partly a matter of getting the capital to do it, getting the right partners, the right people to come on board to help with that. And so, we're actively sort of involved in
working towards it.
discussions.
Yeah. Well, and once you get the iOS app at a place where you guys are happy with it, then it's much easier to then go to someone and say, this is the iOS app, make an Android app that is the same, because then the question becomes, what technology do we need to use, rather than what are we building, what technology do we need to use, what does it look like, how does it function, and all that stuff as well. So I just use Android devices, so that's why I asked.
Yeah, I would love to say here it's ready. It's high on the agenda, and I can't say anything more than that at the moment.
Well, I mean, it's a measured thing, right? Like you can't do everything in one go. You've got to be careful about it, because if you overextend yourself just to develop an app, that could see the business go under completely if you sort of overcapitalize there. So it's all part of these calculations that you've got to make, looking at the ultimate destination. And if it takes you 12 months longer, but then you end up with a better Android app and a more sustainable business, that's always going to be better than just answering the annoying Android fanboys like me who just wants an app to check it out. But saying that, we're getting, once the new iPhone gets announced, we're gonna acquire another iPhone for testing purposes, so we can download and check out your app at that time as well.
Cool.
Speak of which, where can people find out more about your businesses and yourself?
Also the animation. Thanks. So I'm on LinkedIn. You can find me, Adrian King. And you can find out about the animation business at redboat.com.au. It's Redboat, as in boat floats on water that's painted red. Redboat.com.au. And that's a whole nother story. I won't go into why I called it that. But that's Redboat.com for the animation. And then for Brivvio is brivvio.com. BRIVVIO.com.
Love it.
That's also on the App Store.
Yeah, awesome. Let's get into the top 12 if you're ready.
Sure. Yeah. Okay.
Top 3 books or podcasts that you recommend.
Yeah, look, I'm listening to an audiobook at the moment, which I'm loving, and that's Gamification by Yukai Chao, which is his Octalysis framework. It's brilliant. And yeah, I mean, it kind of touches on a lot of the amazing stuff that we've been talking about to do with purpose and what motivates people as well. So, it's a great book about gamifying businesses, technology, but it also applies to all sorts of other things like life. How you can use these sort of human psychology things in life. What else? Pitch Anything was a great one I read recently by Oren Klaff. That's fantastic. Some great stuff in there. Contagious was also brilliant. So you can see the theme of the books I've been reading are a lot about communication, pitching, business, and human psychology of understanding how people engage with experiences and businesses and tech.
Yeah,
Hooked was
love it.
another one that was really good by what's his name? Nia Yal, I think it was Ryan Hoover. I'm just scanning through my Audible list at the moment.
Yeah, nice. I'm an audiobook fan as well. I think
Yeah.
it's just amazing.
Venture Deals by Brad Field was a good one that a lot of people talk about. You know what? Also, I love books like Homo Deus and by Yuval Noah Harari. So I think I pronounced that correctly. That stuff's really cool. Love all that stuff about. I suppose it's sort of an anthropological view of humans over the millennia. That's 3 or 4.
That's about 5 or 6, but love it. Top 3 software tools that you can't live without.
Oh man. Okay. Now you got me.
What's the first thing you check when you're out of bed on your phone? Like, what is there an app that you go
Yeah.
to?
First thing I go to. I read the news stuff. That's probably the first thing is catch up on some news, which I probably shouldn't do because it's all very depressing these days. I hate to say it, but I do read Facebook to stay in touch with friends, stuff like that. Yeah. But it's all right. A lot of stuff is actually Slack is a big part of my life now, which I never thought it would be, but it has become that to discuss with my team. Email, I have a love-hate relationship with, and I use Gmail, but I'm struggling with email these days. Like, it's just become this stream of emails that it's hard to keep up with, and because it's too many marketing lists I'm on or something like that. And no matter how many times I've gone through this process of getting back to inbox 0 and yeah, it never seems to last. So things like Slack I like because they're actually built around this concept of a conversational stream. So that type of, I think we're shifting, in terms of our transactional conversations to become more Slack-like.
Yeah, definitely. Like, even for us, external communication still happens through email, but where we can, we put clients into other, like, we use Hangouts internally, which is a Google product similar to Slack.
Yeah.
We would put, we're happy to add a client on Slack if that's easier for them to communicate, or we text with a few clients, or I text with a few clients so it's almost like a question that we put to them and say, what's the best way to communicate with you? Like the bookkeeper and I, we always text or call because we've sort of established that that's the best way to get an immediate action from either one of us. So I think part of sort of what we're sort of coming up with is that looking at sort of the tools and looking at how that fits into your life and how it works, and not necessarily just doing things because that's how things have been done. I think really, really sort of tweaking what you're doing for why you're doing it is a good way to approach it. Top 3 mantras you try to live by.
I kind of got one, which is believe nothing, entertain everything. And what that means is, it's kind of believe nothing, right? Don't believe stuff. Always question everything because there's always a different view of reality. And it goes down to a fundamental, I suppose, acknowledgement that each of us has a valid experience of reality, and not to believe other people's views necessarily. And to the entertain everything part of it is that if you don't entertain everything, you're accepting limitations from preconceived ideas, whether it be your own limitations or other people's projections of what is achievable. And so entertain everything means always leave your options open to something bigger and better and more exciting, or more passion filled, or more purposeful, or better outcomes, because everything's possible. Nothing's true.
Exactly. Like that's something I come across a lot of is, I just keep thinking, because people say that's not possible, that's impossible, that's so rare. But the way I look at it is, if humans already done it, then I'm a human too, and I can probably do it. And if a human hasn't done it, and if there's no, there's no reason why you can't try and do it and you can't explore it. So, entertaining everything, I think, is how I go into everything with an open mind, because there have been meetings where, we talk to a client, and, this is sort of the 30th, 50th client from the same industry. And we go in sort of knowing this is the playbook that we're going to follow for these guys. And, they say something, or they've tapped into something that just completely opens everything up. And if we didn't go in with that mindset of, this is an idea that we have, but we've got to really build out our solution based on the client, we could have left something on the table that we would have otherwise been able to tap into. So
Yeah.
love that. Top 3 people you follow or study, and why? Do you sort of keep track of what I know certain entrepreneurs, business people are doing, anything like that?
Not really. I probably should. Yeah, no, not really. Yeah, that'd be good.
Well,
It's a
I
great
think
idea, Jermaine. I'll start doing that.
I mean, I don't. I ask the question every episode,
Yeah.
but I don't. I mean, I would lie if I said I do that. But at the same time, I think that's for me, because I am trying as much as possible to run my own race. I'm very good at putting pressure on myself without necessarily having to look at what other people are doing to put more pressure on myself.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I
There's
think
so many great people out there. I mean, think I go through phases of spending a bit of time looking at different people. I remember there was a phase where I followed a lot of, oh God, brain's gone blank. The social video guy that everybody knows is really outspoken.
Gary
Always wears
Vaynerchuk.
Gary V. Yeah.
Yeah, Gary
So I was
Vee.
following a lot of his stuff for a while, and I follow a lot of these sort of outspoken, so they're all over social media, and it's interesting to follow and listen in. And take it all with a pinch of salt. But there's some great stuff in there if you read, especially if you read between the lines, because not every it there is never. I find with those types of influences, there's never a one size fits all solution. They have some great stuff and great content, but it's not always applicable to everybody. And so you have to just selectively pick bits and pieces from different people and find out what works for you. And that's true for everybody, in the sense of that, nobody's going to have the same circumstances and situation or business. So I move around. One I'm doing at the moment is with a great guy that does video ninjas. His name's Ken Owasaki, and he's based in Tokyo, and he does some great courses and trainings about becoming a better video presenter, presenting and doing marketing videos and stuff like that. He's great. I highly recommend his stuff. What else? Yeah.
Yeah, no,
There
no,
you go.
totally agree. And I think, quickly touching on your Gary V point, or talking, look at listening to influencers. I think what you've got to remember, even when it comes to businesses, just because they've had success, even if that person or the company that they're worked with looks exactly like yours, ultimately it's execution, and it's a lot more factors that go into it than just than just, oh, they worked for someone in my industry, so they will be able to do the same thing for me. And the same thing applies, like, for testimonials. Same thing applies for influencers putting out messages. Just because it worked for them to work for their dad, in Gary Vee's case, for a long time, and take
Mm.
build the first online wine library and all that stuff. I mean, good luck trying to create the world's first online whatever nowadays. Everything's
Yeah. Yeah.
everything's
Right.
been done. So you
Yeah.
just gotta, but you've got to take out of that, that maybe
Yeah.
the point is that you've got to be willing to just work your butt off, or
Exactly.
experiment and innovate, and take
Yeah.
from that what your message needs to be. So
Yeah.
thanks for your time, Adrian.
My pleasure, man. My
It's been
absolute
a
pleasure.
wonderful conversation.
Yeah, it's been awesome. Yeah.
Would love to catch up sometime. And for
Yeah.
one last time, give us the two different links for your two different businesses.
Thanks, man. Yeah. So Redboat, the animation business, is redboat.com.au, and Brivvio, for the app that lets you create branded and captioned videos instantly, is brivvio.com, BRIVVIO.com.
Awesome. Thanks again.
Cheers, Jermaine.